I will say that's kind of crazy. Uh, I think it's time to start looking into letting Matt Stafford go. I know he's got a huge contract, and it's not going to happen this year, maybe even next year. But in a couple seasons from now, you really got to start looking at doing something different because I do like Stafford. He's a great arm talent. He's a huge arm, probably the biggest arm other than Mahomes maybe now. But he he's going to be nothing more than a team that can possibly get you to the playoffs. And I don't know if it's coaching around him also is the problem, and he's got to be shouldering a lot of this blame because he's been there long enough now, and it's still not getting done. So that's my Lions take. I'm all in on getting rid of Patricia after this year, and now I'm also getting on board to start looking at Matt Stafford as well.
That he brings up a good point as far as Black Monday this year. We always talk about Black Monday. Who's on the hot seat, who's not. I don't see the Lions or any team firing a coach after 1 year. I don't know that there's even a precedent for that. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it would be hard for them to fire Matt Patricia at this point. They kind of locked into him. But you're right. He just hasn't gotten the job done. You bring in a first-year coach to a team that had done pretty well under Jim Caldwell, and you're sitting at 5-10 heading into their last game. With Matt Stafford and the offense really kind of bogged down in the mud. I don't think they've scored more than 20 points in 5 straight games, and could be a product of coaching. Their offensive coordinator maybe you replace him. And you stick with Patricia, and you hope that he can do some things with that defense. And then Matt Stafford's got that albatross contract that's going to pay him a lot of money over the next 4 or 5 seasons that he signed. Good quarterbacks are awfully hard to find. I know that's not a reason to keep him if you don't think he's the answer. But when you move on from a quarterback, you really have to be sure that you have somebody that can kind of step in. And assume that role. Now, Teddy Bridgewater could be a free agent. He's going to start with the Saints on Sunday because that game means nothing, so Drew Brees is going to take a seat. We already talked about Nick Foles possibly being available. Maybe they look at him, but you have to be careful when you move on from a guy that you thought was your franchise quarterback and paid a lot of money to. You have to kind of have a good plan in place. But Black Monday, there's plenty of coaches that could go. You look at Arizona. And maybe there's a precedent there. I think Steve Wilkes is on the hot seat. They just hired him last year, and he may not be back. And Dirk Cutter down in Tampa Bay, they're still playing pretty hard in Tampa Bay. But 3 years they still haven't made the playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs in 14 years, Tampa Bay. So Dirk Cutter could be gone. I look at a guy in Carolina. I think that he's safe. I think I saw a story where he's safe. But Ron Rivera, the Panthers are 6-2 at one point, and you've lost 7 in a row. I don't know how you bring back a coach who's lost 7 games in a row. I know he's had a good track record of success down there, but the Panthers had everything going for them, and then they just kind of hit the wall, and they haven't won a game in 2 months. So, possibly him. And then the AFC. You look at Todd Bowles with the New York Jets. I think he's probably going to go. They might bring in an offensive coach to kind of, build up Sam Darnold. I can't think of anybody else right now in the AFC, but I'm sure there's some. Marvin Lewis, of course, we mention his name every year with the Bengals. He seems to have pictures of somebody in Cincinnati because he always keeps his job. So there'll be some coaches let go. There always are. There could be as many as 5 or 6 that lose their job on Monday.
Here's a scenario for you, and we talked about this last week with Superfan Adam of the Browns. His thoughts are that Ty moves into the head coach position in Cincinnati, and Marvin Lewis moves up to the front office. That seems like a stupid scenario to me, but a most reality type scenario, if you will.
Yeah, what Marvin Lewis likes Andy Dalton. Maybe it's time to move on from Andy Dalton too. So if you elevate Marvin Lewis to the front office position, that would certainly make Andy Dalton feel pretty good because Lewis loves that guy. And maybe it's time for the Bengals to move on at quarterback and get rid of Andy Dalton. Again, maybe Nick Foles or Teddy Bridgewater. And I know there's some other quarterbacks that probably I can't think of off the top of my head that might be available in this offseason. But I would be curious. I think if you're the Bengals. Their track record of success, not real good. I don't know how you keep Marvin Lewis around at all. You probably need a fresh start there in Cincinnati.
So let's talk a little bit about Jacksonville. Tom Coughlin, if he fires the head coach, can he hire himself?
I guess he could. Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, I don't know if he wants to. He's
I mean,
70 plus
would that
years old.
affect the Brady rule or not?
What rule's that? The Brady rule?
Oh, I've got the rule confused in my mind, but I thought there was a rule that would prevent that from happening. So that was what was in my mind.
Oh,
so
yeah. I don't know if there is or not. I mean, Tom Coughlin used to coach, did a good job. I mean, I don't think he would. I don't know if he'd want to put himself back out there, and he probably does miss it. But I think he would probably want to try to bring in somebody different. I don't know if the owner would let that happen. So I don't know. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they move on from who is it? Doug Marrone down there in Jacksonville. He could be gone. Certainly, Jacksonville was one of my picks to get to the Super Bowl at the start of the year to play the Rams. So, we all see how that's turned out. But Jacksonville can do Indianapolis and Tennessee a big favor if they find a way to beat Houston on Sunday.
Well, heck yeah. Rick Reagan, let's get some final thoughts from you as we move into the AFC. Obviously, we want to see what happens with the AFC South, but certainly the Chiefs you got to look at having a stronghold there. Here we go again. We're talking about the New England Patriots, and they still haven't eliminated themselves, and there is a mathematical formula that still says that the Super Bowl in the AFC can come through New England. I hope that's not the case, but I'm on board with Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes is an MVP guy in the conversation that you've got to be talking about. Certainly, if not the MVP. But what are your thoughts, Rick, on the AFC?
Well, I was want to just throwing everything out there about the NFC because we were talking about Black Monday, and I want to look at the other side, the opposite of that, which coaches actually get hired. And I have pretty much convinced myself that Jim Caldwell is going to be the next head coach of the Packers. And if you look at what his history with quarterbacks, he's one of the most respected coaches in the league as far as quarterbacks go. He's a respected coach anyway, very likable guy, coach anybody up. And I just think with who the quarterback is in Green Bay and bringing in Jim Caldwell is actually a perfect fit. And I have convinced myself that Jim Caldwell is going to be the next head coach of the Packers. And, I mean, you heard anything about that? Any thoughts on that?
And I know, Ed, on that as well. I know I texted you as well as they interviewed Trick Pagano as well for that position. And just to throw in another Colts connection to the Green Bay Packers, Pat McAfee will be in the broadcast booth in the Packers game this weekend. But go ahead, Ed.
Well, I mean, Matt Stafford earned his big contract with Jim Caldwell as his coach. So, he's got a good track record with quarterbacks. And to me, you guys know how I feel about hiring a defensive coordinator to be a head coach. I don't like that move. I know it's kind of prejudiced against defensive coordinators, but I just think that in this league, in this day and age, trending with the offense, I think you need to bring in an offensive mind and then hire a good defensive coordinator. But I think you need an offensive mind. And, Jim Caldwell showed the ability to get the best out of Matthew Stafford. Aaron Rodgers is, I think, 35 years old. I mean, how many more years does he have left to play? So really, maybe 3 years. You have to bring somebody in that can work well with Aaron Rodgers for the final 3 years or so of his career. And maybe Jim Caldwell's that guy. It's not really out of that far-fetched, Rick. I kind of like that thought.
Well, guys, let's get our final thoughts, if you will. We got about 5 minutes left on the clock. We'll start with you, Rick. I know that we kind of went through your list, and that was LeBron going to L.A. I don't have your list here in front of me. There was the Tua coming in the second half. There was a 16 beating the number 1 seed. There was Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson doing a one-on-one match, if you will. What other top team stories do you have for us?
Is that for me or for Ed? I'm sorry.
That's for you, Rick.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said earlier, we was talking with Matt Hicks and Walt Ferber. My top story 2018 kicks off at 3 o'clock today. So, I've been a nervous wreck for about 3 weeks about this game coming up, and that's where all my focus is today. So it's 3 o'clock. That 3 o'clock kickoff, Central Time here. That's what my head's wrapped around right now.
That would be the Clemson game. Yes. Absolutely. I'm gonna be tuned in to it as well. Ed, what are your final thoughts as far as the top 2018 stories in the NFL, or it doesn't have to necessarily be in the NFL?
Yeah, no, Notre Dame's a good top story of 2018 for sure. And you wonder about Brian Kelly. Is he going to jump ship for the NFL after the season he has? I don't know if there's a lot of buzz in that direction, but it could happen. My top story, of course.
I've heard those rumors, but I can't see it happening. I think Lincoln Riley be the guy from college, or maybe even David Shaw before Brian Kelly. But
yeah, David Shaw never wants to leave Stanford, though. He loves it out there at Stanford, so I don't think he'll go. But Lincoln Riley, he certainly could be. But hey, maybe there's two guys, or maybe Urban Meyer. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly some
maybe.
good candidates.
He's got a new job every week.
Yeah, I know. But my top story, guys, is it's a no-brainer. Is the Eagles, the improbable run to the Super Bowl. It's not a homer or a biased pick. I just think it is. With Nick Foles being the MVP, I don't know how you get any better than that. 3 games as the underdog. They beat Tom Brady. They slayed that giant in the Super Bowl, and it was just a terrific story of the year. I love that number 16, UMBC beating the number 1 seed University of Virginia. First time that ever happened in the NCAA tournament. Love that. Here locally in Philadelphia, Villanova winning 2 out of the last 3 national championships is certainly a big story. And then like we mentioned in the NFL, I think that Frank Reich, that 1-5 Colts story, getting them to this point where it's win and they're in with a young team, a new coach, believing in the message. I love that story in the NFL, and I like the Bears' elevation to winning the NFC North as well. Nobody expected that. I know they traded for Khalil Mack, kind of tilted the field in their favor, but still Matt Nagy coming in and doing what he did with the Chicago Bears and taking them to the title, and possibly could be one of those dark horse teams in the NFC that could make a run and get to the championship game or the Super Bowl. So those are the 2 top stories in my opinion. I know we talked about Baker Mayfield, but I'd probably put him a little, maybe the Browns 3rd right now at this point. Maybe next year the Browns are the feel-good story when they get to the playoffs. But I just like a 1-5 team winning whatever it is to get to 9-6. I guess they go 8-1 over their last 9 games. I mean, it's just amazing turn of events for the Colts this season.
Does Kansas City get represented in the Super Bowl this year, and does Patrick Mahomes get the MVP?
Yeah, I think Mahomes is the MVP, but then look at who the coach of the Chiefs is, Andy Reid. They always seem to come up small, unfortunately. I like Andy, good guy, but you kind of seen the Chiefs' defense exposed. They lose Kareem Hunt. That offense is probably averaging a touchdown less than what they did with Kareem Hunt around, and the inability to stay on the field for very long stretches has exposed that defense. That's a big weakness for the Chiefs. I think the AFC is wide open. I don't think the Patriots will be that team. I'm not sure the Chiefs will either. I think that representation in the Super Bowl is going to come from the Los Angeles Chargers.
Guys, we've only got about a minute left. So, Rick Reagan, give us your words of wisdom going into 2019.
Yeah, for me, Drew Brees probably going to win the MVP award, but me personally, I think it should go to a defensive guy because we have not seen a defensive player impact games the way Khalil Mack has since, like, maybe Reggie White or Lawrence Taylor, those guys a long time ago. So what he's done this year is impressive. For me, the season MVP award should go to Khalil Mack. It's an offensive award, but that's my words of wisdom. Let the defensive guys have their day. Khalil Mack is the MVP.
Ed, what is your words of wisdom? Take us into 2019 being smarter and wiser.
I love Rick's words of wisdom with Khalil Mack. It's a great outside-the-box thought. You could say the same thing for